Well, hello and welcome, or welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast with me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, it is an exceptional Oregon right now. I'm going to say exceptional because, quite honestly, looking ahead at the forecast, it looks like the exceptional days may be behind us for a while. There's rain on the horizon. We're definitely starting to see the transition into fall. And I hope all of you are well. How are you? It's been a minute since I've been recording a full episode, and I am looking forward to being back on the show and just sharing some insights and sharing some thoughts today. It has been a nice break and really enjoyed getting to share a lot from my summer content series. I know I got a lot of positive feedback. People really enjoyed some of those episodes from Monica and from Elizabeth Benton. And I just so appreciate folks allowing me to share that content with you all. And I hope you'll check out their podcasts. All righty. Today, we are talking about a couple of different behaviors, I guess I will call them, that come up often from my coaching clients, from listeners, from people in our Alcohol Minimalist Facebook group. And they may not see them or label them as such, but I see these behaviors time and time again. And so I did a little research because I had heard things in the past about correlations between both of these behaviors and problematic drinking. And so I think they're worth looking at specifically and talking about specifically and just diving in with some curiosity to really see if this is something that maybe you need to look at as well. The two different behaviors are drinking alone. Now, for all of you that live alone, let's not panic, all right? I want you to, we'll talk about this more, but drinking alone and drinking secrecy. And these are behaviors that can really fly under the radar because they are common. They are often habitual. And the thing is that they are both correlated with a higher risk of developing a problematic relationship with alcohol. So I want to be clear, neither of these behaviors mean that you have alcohol use disorder, but they are worth getting curious about because they are tied to the way our brains form habits, especially when alcohol is used for emotional relief or as a coping mechanism, which we talk about time and time again and is very, very common for people like me or any of you that developed a habit that no longer served us around with alcohol. In this episode, we're going to unpack what these patterns look like. We are going to talk about what the science actually says about these types of behaviors. And we're going to give you some tools to recognize and shift those habits without shame, without labels, and without needing to be perfect, right? Because that's what we do here at the Alcohol Minimalist. We are looking for opportunities to get incrementally better. And so with that, let's go ahead and dive in. So what do I mean when I say drink alone? All right. This is one of those phrases that carries a lot of baggage and a lot of issue for people, especially who live alone. We tend to picture someone in a dark kitchen at 2 a.m. with a bottle, right? This image of drinking alone. And the image can be so extreme that many people immediately think, well, that's definitely not me. But drinking alone is actually very common, obviously, especially for people who live alone, who maybe work from home, right? And simply enjoy having a glass of wine or a cocktail in the evening. And the key distinction that I want to make here is that drinking alone doesn't mean you have a problem. But if it becomes habitual, emotional, or automatic, it is something to look at more closely and understand that because living alone or drinking alone has its own set of challenges when things become habitual around alcohol, you're really going to want to pay attention to your own drinking behaviors. You want to ask yourself, what purpose is this serving? What is this really helping me relax? Is it becoming the only way I know how to relax? These questions really open the door to self-awareness and really paying attention to what the habit looks like when we are drinking alone. Let's bring in the science for just a minute. A study published in Drug and Alcohol Dependence found that adolescents and young adults who drank alone were more than twice as likely to develop symptoms of alcohol use disorder in adulthood, even after controlling for how much they drank overall. Now, that's a powerful finding, and it doesn't just apply to teens. In adults, solitary drinking, especially when used as an emotional coping strategy, is linked to higher overall alcohol consumption, greater difficulty moderating, and increased risk for dependence over time. When we drink alone to manage our feelings, we are really, whether it's drinking alone or anytime we drink to manage emotions, but specifically drinking alone, we are reinforcing that habit loop. We are reinforcing the feel discomfort, feel boredom, feel alone, drink, temporarily feel better. And that association builds over time, especially in solitude where there are no social checks or feedback loops. Awareness, of course, is the antidote. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this today. We have to understand that drinking alone presents challenges that may or may not exist if you are drinking, around other people. I also want to talk about another pattern that I hear about from people, and that is drinking secrecy. Now, I am not necessarily talking about, going into the garage and drinking, pouring something so that your partner doesn't see it. It doesn't always look that way. Sometimes secrecy is subtle and it can be internal. Some examples would include downplaying how much you've already had, drinking before you go out, and then when you get there, pretending that your first drink is your first, quietly refilling your glass when no one's paying attention, and just not being honest with yourself about how much you are drinking. I was talking to a coaching client recently, and they said, I had to be honest with myself. I was counting this number and I came to realize that's not true. I'm actually drinking this many drinks every time I say that I'm drinking this many drinks. Always kind of wanting to shave one off or minimize or downplay how much you're actually drinking is kind of what we're talking about. It's a warning sign. People tell me this all the time. I just didn't really want to look at how much I was drinking. I didn't write it down because it didn't seem like it counted. I told myself it was just 2, but I know it was more, right? So that kind of secrecy, not necessarily from others, but from yourself, not reporting it in your Sunnyside app tracker, right? That is secrecy, lying to yourself. And the more you avoid that truth, the easier it is for the habit to deepen. Now, while there is less direct clinical research on secrecy as a standalone risk factor, we do know this. Studies show that as many as 70% of people diagnosed with alcohol use disorder report some form of concealment or secrecy, whether from others or from themselves. Again, take this away. Secrecy does not mean that you have alcohol use disorder, but it often does show up alongside escalating patterns. So it's not about being deceptive or dishonest. It's about avoiding discomfort, and that is totally human. But secrecy blocks us from getting the data we need to change. It interferes with clarity, and clarity is what leads to agency and being able to begin. We cannot change what we cannot see. I say that all the time. And this is why secrecy is, drinking secrecy is super important. Now, I want to talk specifically to those of you who do live alone, because this is where drinking alone and drinking secrecy start to blur. When you live alone, you don't have anyone to hide your drinking from, but you also don't have anyone keeping you honest. There's no partner watching the pour. There's no friend to say, that's enough for tonight. There is no one interrupting the pattern. And so your habits become completely self-reinforced. And over time, that can look like finishing the bottle and not really thinking twice about it, drinking every evening because that's just what you do, pouring without pausing because the glass is just always there. It's not just inherently dangerous, but it is very unconscious. And that's what we want to change. You can absolutely live alone and still have a peaceful, mindful, alcohol optional lifestyle. It starts with noticing the loop and disrupting it with intention. We were talking in the group coaching call this weekend, and somebody was talking about boredom, right? Doesn't live alone, but was talking about how alcohol was just what they do at night. And I hear that a lot as well, especially from people who live alone. It's just becomes a pattern of that's just what I do. And so I really want you to ask yourself if you're being completely honest with yourself, not being secretive about what it is you're doing on a nightly basis, and then also really asking if drinking alone is something that you really want to continue. Because I always look for opportunity to change just one piece of behavior first. So if you simply eliminated drinking alone as part of the way that you were going to change your relationship with alcohol, for those of you that do drink alone. And if you just said, I'm just going to include alcohol when I go out with other people, when I'm out for a celebration, when I'm out for a dinner, and at home, I am not going to choose to drink on a nightly basis, even if it's cutting back, just, adding in alcohol-free days and deciding okay, no more than one night per week at home alone will I include alcohol. These are the kind of conversations that I want you to have with yourself, that I want you to pay attention with regards to your behavior. And I want you to notice how you are including alcohol in your life and how you would, ultimately like to include alcohol in your life. That's something I ask everybody that I work with. If you could wave a magic wand, what would your relationship with alcohol look like? How would it be different than it is today? Now, if this conversation is stirring something up for you and you're wondering whether your pattern might be sliding into risky territory, I do want to give you a very helpful resource. Over at the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, the NIAAA, there is a free confidential self-assessment tool based on the DSM-5 criteria for alcohol use disorder. It includes 11 questions that help you reflect on your behavior. And they're things like, have you found that drinking interferes with responsibilities? Have you kept drinking even when it caused relationship issues? Have you tried to cut back but couldn't? And each yes adds to your total, and your total gives you insight into where your drinking falls on a spectrum from mild to moderate to severe. And again, let me be clear, this isn't a diagnosis. It's not about labeling yourself. It's really a mirror, right? A science-based tool for honest reflection. And you can find that tool at rethinkingdrinking.niaaa.nih.gov, which I will link in the show notes too. But looking at those criteria for alcohol use disorder, at least get you to open your eyes and be aware of and look for links between things that you might be doing now to potentially having problems with regards with your relationship with alcohol. Even just reading the questions can shift your awareness, and awareness really is where everything starts. Now, whether you drink alone, or if you have experienced secrecy, or you just feel uneasy about how how the drinking has maybe ticked up over the summer, or what have you, here are 6 science-based tools to help you change those patterns. Number 1, this is important. We often talk about making plans. We talk about tracking. People are, have lots of opinions on making plans and actually tracking numbers of drinks. Instead of any of that, I want you to track your why before you pour your first drink. Especially if you live alone, I want you to ask yourself, why am I reaching for this drink? Is it stress? Is it boredom? Is it habit? Is it loneliness? I want you to get specific. And whatever that answer is, I want you to think about whether or not alcohol is actually solving for whatever feeling it is that you are trying to navigate. Because the answer is it doesn't. Alcohol might temporarily soothe something, but it doesn't solve for it. And so we need to figure out different coping strategies, right? Number 2, you got to interrupt the autopilot. Add a 10-minute pause. If you have never heard me talk about the PB&J, I will link it in the show notes as well. But the PB&J stands for, that J part of the PB&J stands for just 10 minutes. Stretch, walk, drink some water, do some journaling, do something different. Interrupt the loop, interrupt the craving, pause, breathe, and do it for just 10 minutes. Number 3, track every drink for a week. Okay? Write it down, even if it's uncomfortable. Total honesty. No minimizing, just data. We have to have a clear picture of where we're starting from, so that we can actually see progress when progress is happening. And this is an important piece of changing your relationship with alcohol. Let's name the behavior and don't make it who you are, right? So you're not bad, you're not broken, you're not hopeless. You are building awareness around the habit pattern and why you're drinking, and what that means, and how you have created a pattern or a link between whatever it is that the why and the alcohol in your glass. Number 5, we want to create new rituals, especially for the evening. Alcohol often fills a role for people, and I get that. For transition, for reward, for relaxation, to alleviate boredom. We have to replace it intentionally. We have to choose, set ourselves up for success. I say that to my clients all the time. We have to look ahead. We have to plan for what's going to happen when 5 o'clock rolls around or 6 o'clock rolls around, and we are used to pouring ourselves a glass of wine. We got to figure out something different. And it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. That is okay. That's not a problem. Don't make it one. If it feels like you're white knuckling in the beginning, that's all right. It should feel a little uncomfortable. You don't have to describe it as white knuckling. We can just describe it as, it's uncomfortable because this is something that I'm not used to doing, and I have a really strong habit pattern. And number 6, I want you to, as I said, visualize your peaceful relationship with alcohol. Not all or nothing, just calm, clear, choice-based drinking or not drinking. And really make that your goalpost, right? see and look for what it is and remind yourself, like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I am now, moving to being mostly alcohol free when I am at home and when I'm alone. Whether you're drinking alone and wondering why, or you're practicing secrecy either with others or yourself, or if you live alone and you feel like the pattern is quietly getting stronger, I really want you to hear me. You are not stuck. You are not broken. You are not hopeless. You're a human with a brain that has learned a loop, and you have the power to unlearn it step by step. These behaviors are common, and they are also changeable. You got to start with self-awareness. Use the tools. Check out the NIAAA's self-awareness tool for AUD, but also just ask yourself, right? What am I doing on a nightly basis? How much am I drinking? What do I wish that that relationship with alcohol looked like? Get very clear on that what is going on now, so that you can take one small step in the next week to come that moves you in the direction of who you are becoming. That's how change begins. Now, if you liked what you heard here today, that's awesome. Welcome. If you haven't been listening to the show, or if you've just missed me because I haven't been around, I've been off, for the last few weeks, then again, thanks for being here. If you have not checked out the Alcohol Minimalist Facebook group yet, I encourage you to do that. And as always, you can always reach out to me directly, molly@mollywatts.com. I love to hear from you all. It brings me a lot of joy. And if you have some suggestions on what you'd like to hear about on the podcast, I'd love to hear those as well. Until next time, be very kind to yourself. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about small steps. And if you are just like realizing, hey, you know what? I actually do kind of have some things that I need to work on with regards to drinking alone or drinking secrecy, then I hope that this episode helped you in some way. Choose peace, everybody, and I will see you on Thursday.